Good morning and welcome to Core Finance. My name is Mike Ingram, market strategist at BGC Partners, and I'm joined today by market commentator at Panmure Gordon and City legend, David Buik.
You can leave the final bit off. Good morning, Michael.
Good morning. And how are you today?
I'm in good order.
Excellent, excellent. Right, Theresa May. She's off to Japan. Cap in hand, perhaps? Is she going to come back with anything?
This is an interesting one. I saw the headline of the Financial Times yesterday, and I'm thinking, doesn't like Brexit, obsessed with remaining. This is a slightly negative headline. Then the penny dropped. The fact is that the Financial Times is owned by Nikkei, so they will have been very well versed. Leo Lewis, who I know well, would have been very much known exactly what was going on.
Right.
So my reading of the situation is this, is that either Prime Minister Abe is guilty of gross discourtesy from a diplomatic perspective, or Theresa May has misjudged the situation completely. I personally understand, because of the size of the European Union, why Abe would want to put to bed his trade deal with the European Union, apart from the fact that it will take a minimum of 3 years. Because most people in the European Union, because of the 27 countries, can't agree whether they're going to have a breakfast tomorrow, let alone a trade deal of that nature or size. And I would have thought it would be in Abe's interests to be able to do one quite quickly and succinctly and clearly with the United Kingdom. But it wasn't to be. So why Theresa May is going there, whether it's to lay the ground rules, but when she actually knows whether it's a headline or whether it's actual fact, strikes me as rather a waste of time, because she's got very much more pressing business over here, and she is going to be given an extremely hard time by Sir Keir Starmer and by Jeremy Corbyn in the House of Commons, who've done a complete U-turn on their perspective on the European exit from the European Union, because this is a way they see of having that decision overturned and possibly getting rid of the government. Yeah. I'd like to think I'm wrong, but I think she's misjudged this one.
Yeah, I mean, it does look like a dangerous distraction, perhaps, bearing in mind that the negotiations with the European Union don't seem to be going well. I mean, just going back to Japan for a second, I'm actually been quite surprised how strident Japan's been about it, because you probably remember that 15-page really list of demands they came out with shortly after the referendum last year, and it was an open letter. You know, normally things, by the Ministry of Trade, it's all done through diplomatic channels. Japan is generally known to keep its cards quite close to its chest. And then they were just releasing this 15-page letter, and you're thinking, well, which audience they playing to?
Let me follow up on that.
Yeah.
And it is only body language and hearsay and the rest of it. But what struck me is that there are two things that have come out of this. I hear from industrial and trade sources that Greg Clark is very highly thought of. And he did have constructive conversations with Nissan in Sunderland and with Honda in Swindon, to the degree that the government actually stood up and said, we have given them no written guarantees, but the fact that it appeared that the Japanese government was placated, because if you recall at the time, sterling had received a right larraping anyway and was down something like 12% against the euro and 20% against the dollar, but it's a slightly extent, probably about 18% against the dollar. So, that makes a difference to car prices and the rest of it. But apparently these two plants are unbelievably efficiently run. The United Kingdom is the second largest assemblies of cars in Europe, next to Germany. So there was a fair bit for the European Union to gain by the United Kingdom being blown out by Japan, but it hasn't happened.
Yeah.
So I hear you, and I hear you loud and clear, and your warning message comes across to me, but I was just mildly encouraged by that.
Yeah. Okay. Turning to the broader Brexit picture, I mean, we've got David Davis and Michel Barnier sitting down again together for the third round of negotiations. And what's your readers, how that's going? I saw Barnier within the last 24 hours saying, the UK needs to get realistic, it's worried about ambiguity, and so on and so forth. So it seems to be getting increasingly testy.
Did you use the word negotiation?
Well, yes.
I hadn't heard it. I've just heard edicts and demands.
Lost in translation.
Yeah, well, I think that's probably right. I think one of the things Mr. Barnier, who is clearly in a different league from David Davis in regards to trade negotiation, and thank goodness for the employment of this splendid New Zealander, Crawford Faulkner, who apparently I'm here is stunning.
Right.
Because we are on the back foot on this, but I take deep offence at being not only dictated to by Michel Barnier, but for the UK government to be briefed against. which is wrong. They should, both of them, hang out their dirty linen when all else has gone. And if there is nothing to talk about, and if the United Kingdom, pray God I'm wrong, walks away from it and just says we'll do a world trade agreement with everyone and see you later and we're not going to pay anything, because that would be a disaster. But I think Monsieur Barnier is trying Mr. Davis's patience, despite the fact that everybody tells me, well, you don't understand. Well, clearly I don't. That, you know, they stand to lose rather less than we do. Yes, I accept that. But nonetheless, even if the European Union only does 11% of its trade with the United Kingdom, if that were to go out of the window, the damage that that would do to Europe, whose recovery, I hasten to add, is brittle, would be very damaging indeed, and doesn't suit either party. So I'm suggesting that people don't behave with an average age of 9 and actually grow up, sit down, and negotiate something, or be seen to negotiate something. And if there is no common ground, fair enough. But all we've done is dance to the music, and nobody's actually sat down. The one thing I agree with Barnier, and I think it would settle things enormously, but any concessions given already has been given by the United Kingdom, is this question of the Citizens' Charter. This is ridiculous, Mike.
Yeah.
3 million people, Europeans, wanting to stay here. Bless you, stay here. You've contributed greatly to the economy. We want you here. And there's no one who doesn't agree with that. And the million people who want to live and work in the European Union should be allowed to do so. Maybe that might clear the air, but at the moment it just looks a horrific mess. It looks like we are always reacting instead of being on the front foot.
Right.
But I don't like that. I don't like the tone of it at all.
So looking forward, do you think we're going to have eventually some big political tantrum, or do you think perhaps the business community on both sides of the channel will be able to nudge them back in the right direction?
In my opinion, you've hit the nail on the head. First and foremost, Brexiteers wake up and smell the coffee. There is no overall majority in the House of Commons. Therefore, the agenda's changed. So any thought of a hard Brexit is just nonsense. It's not going to happen.
Right.
You know what side of the fence I come from. I accept it. My hand's up. There's a white flag. So could we just cut the political rubbish out? Because if you speak to people from Sanofi, Avantis Sanofi, from Danone, from Siemens, from Mercedes-Benz, from BMW, from SAP, all these big companies, they want agreement. Yeah. They aren't interested in this political garbage. They want something that works for everybody. Obviously, the European Union is not going to concede absolutely every point, but there is a common ground when we have too much business to do with each other. And what worries me as well is that if this gets a really bad flavour to it, things that really matter, which is like security and terrorism and the rest of it, the cooperation will psychologically diminish, which would be an awful, awful thing considering the part of state that we're in at this current moment in time.
I think it doesn't bode well that the status of expats, respectively, both within Europe, rest of the EU, and within the UK, there's still no agreement even on that, which is supposed to be low-hanging fruit.
Absolutely,
it's not looking good, is it?
They're negotiating pawns, which is utterly ridiculous.
Yeah.
And I think if they actually sat down and saying, because I agree with David Davis that most of these things are intertwined, and you can't say, well, what happens if we say, yes, okay, we're going to pay you £80 billion, whatever, it doesn't matter what the figure is. Yes, we're going to do that. And what about trade? And they say, trade? What's that all about? Of course it's intertwined, but the one thing I completely agree on, if you start in good faith with the Citizens' Charter, or whatever you want to call it, things will come good.
Okay, and to conclude, where do you think we're going to be come March 2019 in terms of an agreement? What do you think that might be?
Sitting under a wad of paper, having sorted out the unemployment in the rainforests, without any question of any doubt, with at least a 3-year agreement, holding everything together to make sure that we don't fall off the cliff, and that the European Union doesn't fall off the cliff. Anybody who thinks that just because the European Union's growth is going gangbusters at the moment in comparison to ours, I give you Greece, I give you Italy, I give you France, I give you Portugal, all is far from well.
Well, we always look forward to that, David. David Buik.
We don't look forward to it, that's the point.
Well, we live in interesting times
Absolutely.
as ever. So David Buik, market commentator, Panmure Gordon, thank you very much.
Great pleasure.